Fact 1. Productive people often structure their day around natural energy waves. They don't try to be at their peak on a schedule, but rather catch windows of deep concentration and carefully protect them. In the first hours after waking, the brain focuses more easily. There are fewer incoming signals, less social noise, and a weaker temptation to reply to all. Therefore, complex tasks, such as writing emails that aren't about rescheduling meetings but involve architectural ideas, model calculations, or scenario planning, are scheduled for the morning block without notifications or unnecessary tabs. This is followed by alternation, approximately 90 to 120 minutes of immersion and a short active break to switch lenses. This rhythm accounts for ultra-day and waking cycles and allows for finishing without burnout. The evening is not for a heroic sprint to finish everything, but for a conscious slowdown, checking plans and doing light tasks so as not to steal tomorrow's best concentration. Fact 2. Multitasking is not a superpower but a trap. Switching between tasks creates an invisible attention tax. Each jump from a document to a chat leaves a cognitive residue, and the brain needs time to regain depth of focus. Productive people recognize this and design their environment to reduce switching. They group similar actions into batches, a dedicated time slot for responding to messengers, a separate block for calls, and another for manual routine. Notifications are silenced, and quick glances at email are moved to 2 to 3 fixed slots per day. Paradoxically, response speed ultimately increases. When email is processed in batches, decisions are made holistically without losing context. The myth of being everywhere at once is replaced by the practice of being fully here, and this is what brings measurable progress. The third fact is that they have entry and exit rituals for work, simple yet predictable. The starting ritual isn't an hour-long meditation, but a short sequence that gently sets the tone. Opening the day's plan, writing down 3 key results, clearing the desk of clutter, and setting a timer for the first focus cycle. The finishing ritual involves closing loops, gathering notes, recording what's done, outlining the first action for tomorrow, and physically closing down work surfaces. Such a framework reduces anxiety when there are many tasks of varying scales. The brain receives a clear signal, started and finished. This simple discipline works better than grand intentions because it removes friction, that very resistance that arises when trying to start each day from scratch. Rituals transform work from a formless mass into a film with titles, scenes, and clear editing. Fact 4. Time is a container, and productive people fill it in advance. Instead of a hope list for the day, they use time blocking. Key tasks get a slot in the calendar, not just a line in a task list. This creates a framing effect. Time limits don't stifle, but give the task shape, preventing it from spreading out. Parkinson's law, that work expands to fill the time available, is turned to an advantage. Little time is allocated, with a buffer for friction, rather than unlimited time. The reverse timer technique enhances concentration. Start a countdown for 30 to 50 minutes and work according to the plan without assessing quality. When the block is over, a short review follows. What hindered progress? What helped? What to remove in the next cycle? This cycle of planning, execution, and retrospective is a small production line where a sense of control and speed is born. Fifth fact. For them, mistakes are material, not a stigma. Productive people practice short postmortems and even premortems. Before starting a complex task, they formulate what could go wrong, where the bottlenecks are, and what 3 signals will indicate that a change of course is needed. Afterwards, they document the lessons learned, not in abstractions, but in concrete decisions, such as change the brief template, add a checklist when handing over tasks, or reduce the number of meeting participants. This approach shifts the locus of control inward. Instead of "I was unlucky," the question becomes, what is within my sphere of influence? And another small habit is rapid prototyping, creating a minimally viable version, showing it to those who will use it, and gathering feedback before weeks have been invested. Iterations become shorter, decisions calmer, and progress visible. Success in this logic is not a single shot, but a chain of trajectory adjustments. Fact 6. For productive individuals, sleep is not a reward system, but the infrastructure of success. They protect a consistent wake-up time and go to bed to get their 7 to 9 hours of sleep because they know that sleep debt cannot be settled with coffee. The evening zone is a quiet strip. Dim light, minimal screen time 60 to 90 minutes before bed, and no messaging that raises cortisol. Caffeine is consumed during daylight hours, and late workouts are kept in the moderate zone. The morning begins with light. Curtains are pulled back, a short walk is taken, or at least stepping onto the balcony to synchronize circadian clocks. If sleep has been compromised, they do not glorify sleep deprivation, but adjust their schedule, postponing complex decisions, adding a 20-minute daytime rest without falling asleep. On the bedside table is a notebook to offload thoughts from the mind, preventing them from occupying working memory. Regularity triumphs over infrequent feats. It is what makes the brain resilient to stress and keeps attention sharp. Fact 7. Productive people's plans operate on two levels, strategic and tactical. Once a week, a brief review is conducted where projects are checked for relevance and commitments to oneself and others are assessed for feasibility. They transform tasks from general descriptions into concrete steps. Instead of write a report, it becomes gather data from 3 sources, outline the structure, proofread with an analyst. For each day, one big thing is chosen, an anchor around which blocks are built and several secondary tasks. Simultaneously, an inbox system is in place. Any ideas, requests, and minor matters do not capture attention, but fall into a single inbox and are processed in batches. Furthermore, there is the discipline of no. Polite refusals and negotiations about scope become the norm, because success is not only about chosen yeses, but also about protected nos. Such a framework maintains trajectory. Strategy does not drown in urgency, and the day does not turn into a fire. 8th fact. Productive people approach repetitive actions from an engineering perspective. Anything that happens more than twice is turned into a template or a checklist. They have standardized file and version names, presentation skeletons, emails with pre-written blocks, and sets of quick phrases in text expanders. They are proficient with hotkeys and set up automations, email filters, routing rules, simple macros, and button commands for routine report generation. As a result, the brain doesn't expend energy on mechanical tasks. These are offloaded to external supports. The number of transmission errors decreases, colleague onboarding accelerates, and result predictability increases. The secret isn't red tape, but freed up attention. When there's no need to recall how we usually do this, one can think about how to do it better this time. Checklists don't replace creativity, they remove noise and create a channel for it. Fact 9. Meetings for productive teams are a valuable currency spent economically. By default, they are asynchronous. A document with context is provided, comments are left in the tracker, and short updates follow the formula goal, status, blockers. If a meeting is still necessary, it has an agenda, an owner, and an expected outcome. Participants read materials in advance, and at the beginning it is clarified what exactly should be the result, a list of decisions or next actions with responsible parties and deadlines. Duration is a clear boundary in the calendar, 25 or 50 minutes instead of a full hour. The last 5 minutes are for the protocol and sharing. The group is minimal to avoid diluting responsibility. Non-core topics are put into parking and do not consume the agenda. Afterwards, a short decision log is created so the team's memory doesn't depend on the chat. This mode eliminates endless syncs for the sake of syncs and restores meetings to their purpose, to accelerate, not slow down work. 10th fact. The body is part of the production system, and productive people acknowledge this. They build movement into their day. A 10 to 15-minute morning exercise routine, walking between tasks, alternating between standing and sitting at their desk, and taking micro breaks for stretching every hour and a half. Water is readily available, and snacks are not sugary spikes but sustained fuel, nuts, fruits, yogurt. Breathing micro resets, 4 slow cycles, help lower heart rate and restore clarity before an important call. Walking meetings are used for screen-free discussions. A change of scenery enhances mental flexibility and reduces tension. A monitor at eye level, a keyboard positioned under the elbow. Simple ergonomics that conserve energy towards the evening. They treat energy like a budget, planning its expenditure and replenishment rather than relying on inspiration. As a result, the day unfolds smoothly, without jolts. Less back pain, less mental fog, more stable power. Fact 11. Productive individuals have not only to-dos, but also not-to-dos. A stop list that protects their speed better than any motivational poster. It clearly outlines what they systematically avoid. Not opening messengers before the first focus block. Not agreeing to tasks without a clear outcome and deadline. Not entering meetings without an agenda and a decision owner, and not working on new ideas after 8 p.m., only review. Such a list eliminates thousands of micro-decisions. There's no need to argue with oneself each time, as the rules are already set in advance. Anti-goals complement this. Not to lose weight/earn money/do everything, but not to turn the calendar into a crowded chessboard without breathing room. Not to accept urgent commitments for weekends, and not to leave tasks without a next step. After a month of such minus practices, a net positive accumulates. Less chaos, fewer unnecessary promises, and more predictable output. Fact 12. They design the environment, not rely on willpower. The workspace resembles a film set. Everything needed for the scene is at hand. Everything else is out of frame. On the desk is only the current project. Other materials are hidden in labeled containers. But the main thing is the digital environment. Separate browser profiles for roles. Analytics, communication, creative. So tabs don't pull attention across tasks. Do not disturb on schedule. A black and white smartphone mode. And disabled badges on icons to eliminate hooks. Start pages open not a newsfeed but a work tool. Entertainment sites hit a soft barrier, a blocker with a delay. Email doesn't auto-load on system startup, but opens in a designated slot. This friction engineering makes the desired action simple and the unwanted one slightly more difficult. And this small difference decides the outcome of the day. Fact 13. Productive people consider not only the result, but also the process. They break down the confusion between input and output metrics. Output metrics are sales, completed script pages, closed tasks. Input metrics are hours of deep work, number of attempts made, sent proposal emails, minutes of practice. They choose a short daily progress board, 3 counters that can be updated directly in a note or on a board. For example, 2 focus sessions, 30 minutes of skill practice, 5 touches on a key project. Once a week, they calibrate. Which input metrics are most strongly linked to the movement of output metrics? The rest are removed. This approach eliminates the illusion of productivity for the sake of checking a box, where activity is high without effect. When process figures are visible, the day stops being a lottery and becomes a managed experiment. Fact 14. Successful individuals systematically enhance their skills. They don't work longer, but train more thoughtfully. Their schedule includes a slot for tool improvement, 20 to 40 minutes dedicated to practicing a narrow skill against a metric, paragraph structure, blind typing speed, data analysis techniques. After each mini-session, there's feedback, comparison with an example, recording errors, and repeating with corrections. Knowledge doesn't get lost in a chaos of tabs. It lives in a personal database, flashcards, notes, examples with tags and search functionality. Repetition follows a spaced repetition schedule. Today, in a couple of days, a week, a month. In live projects, a sample bank is used. Best solutions with notes on why this worked. This cycle, deliberate practice, gradually raises the ceiling. After a quarter, everyone sees the difference. The same 60 minutes yield a cleaner result because the tool is sharpened and the hand moves more confidently. 15th fact. Their decisions are based on pre-agreed rules to avoid burnout from constant questions like, how should I proceed this time? There is a gradation of reversibility. Minor and reversible decisions are made quickly through testing or a pilot. Costly and irreversible ones go through a full cycle. Hypothesis formulation, risks, alternatives, success criteria, a second opinion. The entry threshold is set by a number. If budget, time, risk is above X, we write a brief memo and check with a partner. Important questions are not made on a low battery. If pulse and sleep have failed, the decision is postponed until the morning window. For incoming requests, a matrix is in effect. If the task is not aligned with my goals and does not carry unique value, it's a polite refusal or scope reduction. The outcome is a transparent decision log, what was chosen and why, so the team doesn't repeat the same forks in the road. This is not bureaucracy, but insurance against impulsive course reversals. Fact 16. The planning horizons of productive individuals do not blend into a single fog. They distinguish directions, goals, and tasks. At the top is the theme of the year, a concise formula that helps choose between good and better. For instance, deepening expertise or team quality. Below are quarterly results with measurable criteria, and further down are monthly sprints and weekly self-commitments. The day is about tactics, 1 anchor and 2 to 3 supporting steps. This multi-level perspective prevents the calendar from dictating meaning. A meeting for the sake of a meeting does not pass the filter. Does it serve the theme of the year? Reassessment occurs on schedule. At the end of the quarter, an assembly is conducted to determine what truly moved the system forward and what was an imitation of movement. If life changes the inputs, the theme is not set in stone. It is adjusted, but carefully, without fuss. As a result, decisions become consistent. Every yes at the bottom is linked to the why at the top. 17th fact. Social capital is part of their production line. They consciously build a feedback loop, consisting of a mentor, an equal-level truth partner, and a couple of people from related fields who can see blind spots. Meetings are short and to the point. 1 document with context, 1 question, what would you do in my place? 1 agreement, we'll check in 2 weeks. Separately, there is a responsibility group. Once a week, everyone voices their commitments and reports on specific metrics, not on words. This is not about pressure, but about friction that straightens the trajectory. Requests for help are formulated to be easy to answer, with examples, options, and a deadline. In return, productive individuals generously share their work. This keeps the network alive. The result is fewer dead ends, faster decision-making, and more quality second opinions when needed. The 18th fact is that they ensure speed with buffers because they know uncertainty is the rule, not the exception. Every project has red lines, deadlines, and dependencies around which protective time is added. Small gaps between tasks so that defects and delays do not break the entire grid. Critical deliveries have a plan B, an alternative contractor, a simplified version that meets the main need. Reserve windows exist in the calendar, 2 to 3 hours a week without assignments, where surprises fall. This design seems like a luxury until the first off-plan event occurs. After it, the buffer becomes an obvious saving. The same principle applies to personal energy. Complex negotiations are not scheduled immediately after intense focus, and before an important presentation, there is a light day without meetings. A buffer is not laziness, but reliability engineering that makes success reproducible, not accidental. 19th fact. Their communications cut through the fog. Instead of vague phrases like "make it look good," they use a brief with 4 blocks: goal, audience, readiness criteria, and constraints. A task receives a definition of done. What exactly will be considered completion? Who will check, and on what scale? Emails open not with a greeting, but with context in 1 paragraph and an action-oriented question. Need to choose between 2 options by Thursday. Within the team, short records of decisions are used: date, what was chosen, why, who is responsible. Contentious discussions are moved to documents with alternatives and arguments to avoid losing logic in chats. Artifacts, mock-ups, examples, benchmarks are attached immediately. The word "quickly" is replaced with "by 4 p.m., 3 screens, no animation." This clarity saves hours of rework and miles of correspondence. And most importantly, it removes emotional assumptions. When the rules of the game are visible, speed stops depending on mood. Fact 20. Productive individuals approach rest not as something that happens by chance, but as a project with metrics. They plan their recovery just as clearly as they plan a campaign launch. This includes weekly digital Saturdays free from messengers, daytime quiet windows for walks or reading, and vacations where work access is blocked technically, not just on good faith. They incorporate deep play into their rest, activities that are both challenging and enjoyable, such as playing a musical instrument, learning a language, chess, or a craft. Such play fuels the same attention as work, but with different energy, reducing the temptation to get stuck in passive feeds. Simultaneously, silent energy leaks are addressed. Late-night series, endless news, aimless calls. They recognize seasonal rhythms. After intense launches come lighter weeks and social detox. Before major negotiations, they enter a mode of minimizing irritants. The outcome is not just less fatigue, but stable performance over the long haul. Fact 21. Productive people rely on if-then plans, pre-made micro-scenarios that remove the burden of making choices in the moment. Examples include: if I've made coffee, then I open the draft of the main task and type the first 3 sentences. If a request comes in to quickly look, then I reply with a template offering 3 options for deadlines and scope. And if there are 10 minutes left before a call, then I fill out the brief, goal, solution, open questions. Such linkages connect a trigger with an action, transforming intention into behavior without willpower struggle. The task stacking method complements this. A new habit is attached to an established one. A note about a book immediately after brushing teeth. A short stretching routine upon returning home. Or an inbox review after lunch. They also introduce guard phrases, short rules for when temptations arise. 1 paragraph first, then I'll check the chat. Protocol first, then I close the tab. Small automaticisms form rails along which the day travels without skidding. Fact 22. Successful people design their information diet as strictly as their training plan. They take stock of their subscriptions, keeping only sources that systematically nourish their tasks. The rest goes into leisure folders with delayed delivery. Reading news is given a window and a limit, not an endless feed on reflexes. Long articles don't just hang around, but are moved to deferred reading with a note, "Why do I need this?" and a brief summary made while the information is fresh, a couple of theses, and a conclusion. Digital notes reside in a single catalog with tags by projects and subjects, and inputs are cleared in batches to avoid keeping half-chewed ideas in working memory. There's a simple ratio. For every hour of consumption, there's at least an hour of production or application. This balance cures information hangover. Instead of feeling overloaded, clarity emerges, and knowledge turns into concrete action within the week. Fact 23. They limit work in progress as the main hidden break, Instead of a dozen parallel streams, a strict WIP limit is enforced, only as much is in progress at any given time as is actually moving forward. This reduces the cost of switching and eliminates the accumulation of half-finished, stuck tasks. When starting something new, productive individuals assess the cost of delay. What will be lost if it's delayed by a week, and what will be gained if it's finished sooner? Planning is done in short batches, and estimates are 3-point: optimistic, baseline, and pessimistic scenarios, plus a buffer for risks. At the end of each cycle, they compare the plan to the actual outcome and update benchmarks so that future estimates rely on history, not hopes. The principle is simple. Completing small tasks and gaining immediate benefit is better than heroically pulling a large task without return for months. The result is a predictable flow and an honest, stable speed. Fact 24th. For productive individuals, writing is a tool for thought, not just a means of conveying information. They maintain a work journal where each entry is a small experiment. The date, a hypothesis, the next step, and observations are recorded. Before a complex task, a bad draft is created, intentionally imperfect, to detach from perfectionism and see the solution's shape. Structure is built using supporting theses, which are then fleshed out with evidence and examples. Visual maps aid the search phase, while a linear plan assists during the assembly phase. Final decisions are captured in short notes, so the team understands the logic, not just the outcome. This written layer serves as external memory. It reduces rumination, speeds up colleague onboarding, and allows returning to a decision point a month later without losing context. Consequently, thought, wrote, checked becomes a standard operation, not a feat. Fact 25th. Emotion management is built into their process because the drop in speed is not due to task complexity but to unnoticed reactions. Productive individuals practice a short name-it-to-tame-it approach. They capture the emotion with words and thereby reduce its intensity. In acute situations, they insert a pause, 90 seconds for breathing and reassessment before responding. Complex emails are written in draft and sent after rereading with a clear head. Their calendars include quiet windows free from triggers, and at the team level, there are rules for safe feedback. Criticism is directed at the work, not the person, and comments are linked to observed facts and their impact. They distinguish between growth discomfort and burnout signals, prolonged cynicism, loss of joy in usual activities, and chronic absent-mindedness. When such markers appear, a recovery protocol is activated: workload reduction, sleep, a conversation with a mentor, and reprioritization. This makes their effectiveness more resilient. Fact 26th. Productive individuals utilize forcing functions, voluntarily established constraints that transform intention into commitment. This is not about toxic whatever-it-takes deadlines, but about smart external hooks. A pre-scheduled demo session on Fridays, a public status update with a specific date, an agreement with a client for an interim showcase, or a symbolic prepayment that makes backing out costly. They send out invitations for a prototype demonstration even before starting the work, thereby setting the pace for the sprint. Within the team, control gates emerge. To move forward, a visible artifact is required: a draft, a mock-up, or a test sample. The scale of the constraint is carefully chosen, strong enough to drive progress but not to break the system. Such an environmental design eliminates the can-cannot dilemma. The choice is already made by the calendar and agreements, and energy is spent on results, not on fighting procrastination. Fact 27th. Making the progress of work visible speeds up its completion. Productivity is enhanced by making progress tangible. A status board with columns for planned, in progress, waiting, done, and a separate shelf for blockers so the team can see where things are stuck and what's needed to move forward. What matters is not the number of cards, but transparency. Each card represents one unit of value with an owner and a done criterion. Visualization helps catch hidden waste, long waiting tails, frequent returns, and evergreen tasks without deadlines. The history of completions forms a done feed, a separate log showing what was closed within a week and why it's important. This panoramic screen changes the psychology of the day. When progress isn't felt, motivation dips. When it's visible, the drive to pull it to done emerges. This works even individually. A simple progress bar for the main task or a checklist of 3 key steps attracts action better than an abstract "do it." Fact 28. The skill of negotiating scope is their hidden accelerator. Instead of a binary yes-no, they respond with a yes-if construction. We'll do it by Wednesday if we limit the scope to 3 screens without animation and with 1 round of revisions. They call this the deadline-scope-quality triangle and discuss which angle is fixed and where there is flexibility. Before starting, a minimum viable version is formulated. What will provide 80% of the benefit without all the frills? Then come review points. If by date X we don't have artifact Y, we reduce the scope or move the deadline, but we don't pretend everything is under control. In emails, the possible options template lives: quick, basic, and extended, with time and money costs. The decision remains with the client, and expectations become clear. This style eliminates the passive "we were asked" and returns control. The project moves not by inertia, but along an agreed trajectory, where each step is protected from scope creep. Fact 29th. They focus on the accumulation effect. Small, consistent steps outperform infrequent bursts. The minimum viable effort principle removes entry friction. 1 script paragraph, 1 partner request, 1 report chart. The bar is set comically low, but it allows for a daily checkmark in the tracker, and the brain stops arguing. The don't break the chain principle also works. A calendar showing a series of completions, and a separate plan for travel or illness, a support version of the habit, so the chain doesn't die. Mathematics is on their side. Improvements of a few % per day or week, by estimates, lead to a multiple increase by the end of the year if the course is maintained. To avoid self-deception, they choose process metrics, minutes of practice, completed attempts, and adjust their course monthly. What matters is not the scale of one day, but the inevitability of the next step. This forms a trajectory that is difficult to break with a single failure. Fact 30. Digital hygiene and versioning are insurance for speed. Productive individuals live by the 3-2-1 backup principle. At least 3 copies, on 2 different media, with 1 copy stored off-site or outside the default cloud account. Quarterly, they conduct recovery drills. They pick a random project and attempt to rebuild it from scratch to verify that backups are not a sham. Files are named according to a unified scheme, with the date and version, such as 2025, August 24th, report v1.2, and changes are logged to understand the logic of edits. For code and texts, version control systems are used: branches for features, merge requests with brief solution descriptions, and release tags. At the end of a sprint, there's a freeze. The stable version branch is archived, and raw material goes into a sandbox. This discipline saves hours and nerves. Final ultimate versions disappear. Losses from equipment failures are reduced, and the team gets up to speed on any document faster. Fact 31. For productive individuals, delegation isn't about dumping a task, but rather transferring responsibility within defined boundaries and with clear indicators. They describe the desired outcome in terms of results, not actions. By Wednesday, a draft guide of 1,200 to 1,500 words with examples and a checklist, with X as the readiness criterion. They provide context on why it's important and outline constraints, standards, who to consult for clarification, and where to find reference materials. Initially, they offer support. jointly breaking down the work into steps and conducting a first check at 20 to 30% completion to steer the course, not for micromanagement. Roles and expectations are documented in a brief paper, RACI or similar. Who decides, who assists, who approves. At the end, a one-page post-mortem is conducted. What worked, what hindered progress, and what can be automated. This builds second-tier strength. People grow, bottlenecks become visible, the owner doesn't become a bottleneck, and the system maintains its pace independently of any single person. Fact 32nd. For productive individuals, prioritization is not about responding to the loudest demands, but about a cold calculation of value. They maintain a task portfolio with scores based on simple scales: reach, impact, confidence, effort, ice/rice, cost of delay, and risk. The funnel operates in two stages. First, a long list of all ideas is generated, and then a cutoff line is set based on the total scores. Major initiatives undergo a quick burn test. What minimal artifact will show a metric increase within 1 to 2 weeks? If no evidence emerges, the idea is placed in a graveyard to avoid drawing resources by inertia. The portfolio is reviewed monthly. New data leads to new sorting. Emotions and task prestige are removed by numbers. A small task might yield a quick win, while a loud project waits until the environment is ready. This approach uncovers hidden priorities and reshapes the calendar for real, not imagined returns. Fact 33rd. Working agreements are the quiet magic of fast teams. Productive teams at the start of collaboration do not rely on defaults, but agree in writing on communication methods and pace. When asynchronous, when synchronous, how much time is normal for a response, and what is considered an urgent request. They establish availability windows by hours and time zones, define status formats, goal, progress, blockers, review rules, comments by noon, edits by 6 p.m., and a policy for parking off-topic discussions. Tools are also part of the agreement. Where the truth about tasks lies, where decisions are stored, where facts are. Conflicts are resolved in advance. Escalation by steps, criteria for raising or leaving for work. This reduces the noise of "I thought" and eliminates grievances over unreads, making meetings shorter. Everyone sees the rules and expectations. As a result, speed stops depending on temperament and starts depending on the system. Fact 34th. Productive individuals base their quick decisions on mental models rather than mood. They utilize fundamental frequencies. First, they ask, how does this usually happen? And only then, how does our case differ? They consider secondary effects. What will happen next if this doesn't work? And calculate the costs of switching. They invert the problem. How to guarantee failure and eliminate the identified pitfalls. For rough estimates, they employ Fermi estimation, breaking down the unknown into a few approximate factors to get the order of magnitude, thus avoiding day-long arguments. The rapid OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, sets the pace. Minimal information, decision, small step, new observation. This doesn't make them always right, but it reduces costly mistakes and speeds up feedback. When logic is visible on paper, it's easier to improve than when it resides in feelings. Fact 35th. Productive individuals embrace a good enough, on-time culture instead of perfect someday. They allocate a budget for polishing, encompassing time and iterations, and pre-agree on what constitutes acceptable quality for the initial release. The 70 to 90% rule applies. Reach a safe level, release, gather signals, then improve with precision, not guesswork. Perfectionism is unpacked into a risk checklist. What exactly is feared? Defects, reputation, returns. For each fear, a countermeasure is devised. A test list, a second look, a plan for quick fixes. At the sprint's end, there's a shipping ritual. The artifact is published, the date is recorded, along with criteria and owners for metric observation. Following this is a debt log. What was consciously deferred and when it will be revisited. This approach overcomes endless just a little more and delivers value sooner. Users provide facts, not hypotheses, and the team sees a result, not an eternal draft. Fact 36. Productive individuals structure their week based on work types. They separate creator mode and manager mode to avoid splitting attention. Mornings are for depth, scripts, code, analysis, requiring a long stretch without interruptions. Closer to noon are windows for meetings and quick approvals. The brain is warmed up but not yet tired. Days are assigned themes. Monday for planning and launch, Tuesday for production, Wednesday for client touchpoints and reviews, Thursday for analytics and refinement, Friday for demos and retrospectives. This framework removes the chaos of random requests. If a topic doesn't fit the day, it's either parked or simplified. Within the day, there are 50 to 90-minute blocks with sliding buffers between them to walk, stretch, jot down conclusions. Routine tasks are placed during natural energy dips, the post-lunch window, late evening. The calendar becomes not a showcase of busyness, but a load map where each segment has its own rhythm and traffic rules. Fact 37. They perceive time not by feelings, but by data. Productive individuals maintain light daily telemetry. They do not turn themselves into an object of micromanagement, but capture key signals: how much deep focus was achieved, how much time was spent on communication, and where attention leaks occur. This can be an automatic tracker, a Pomodoro timer, or a manual 3-line journal. Once a week, a heat map is created, showing which hours are most productive and which tasks consistently fall into the eternal later. Unexpected facts often emerge. For instance, that quick email checks consume over an hour in total, and searching for a file disrupts the pace for 10 minutes. Based on these observations, the environment is adjusted. Folders get clear names, task templates reduce friction, and small checks are consolidated into one slot. Such analytics dispel self-deception and restore control over the schedule, not by the mythical want, but by the proven works. Fact 38. Productive individuals use hybrid tools. Paper and digital do not compete but complement each other. The initial draft of an idea begins on paper. Its speed and tactility help uncover hidden connections and allow for the expansion of thought mapping without menus or a mouse. Subsequently, the material is transferred to a digital system where it can be easily edited, shared, and searched. For short tasks, a capture card is readily available, a small notebook or a stack of index cards. You write it down, tag the project, and drop it into your inbox without opening a screen. For assembly, a whiteboard or sticky notes are used. They provide a visual overview of what is moving where. In the digital realm, there is a single golden catalog: project notes, decisions, checklists, with simple tags and source links. Physical tools aid in starting and thinking expansively, while digital ones facilitate storage, versioning, and collaboration. The outcome is fewer initial hurdles and fewer losses at the end. An idea progresses from inception to artifact without gaps. Fact 39th. When traveling or facing system failures, their operational setup remains intact. Productive individuals possess a portable office and adhere to a protocol for unforeseen circumstances. Their backpacks contain noise-canceling headphones, a lightweight keyboard, a charger, adapters, offline copies of key files, and a list of emergency contacts. Before a flight, a mini checklist is prepared. This involves syncing folders, downloading reading materials, and disabling auto services that might activate while roaming. Upon changing time zones, a gentle adaptation method is employed. This includes exposure to morning light, drinking water, a short walk, and on the first day, focusing solely on routine tasks without making major decisions. Communication is managed in scheduled slots, prearranged windows for interacting with the team and clients. If equipment fails, a paper-based plan is available. It outlines tasks that can be advanced without a screen, such as text structure, a list of questions, or interface sketches. This survival mode transforms travel chaos into a predictable sequence of steps and delays into opportunities for further thought rather than endless frustration in a queue. Fact 40. Their success scales through teaching others, a pass-it-on-and-multiply approach. Productive individuals turn personal discoveries into reproducible artifacts, short guides, tutorials, templates, checklists. Once a week, they address knowledge technical debt. What did we do for the first time, and how can we now do it twice as fast? Newcomers are given a first-day guide and a set of examples of what done looks like, while complex decisions are accompanied by notes explaining why this approach was chosen. They practice mentorship and internal lectures, half-hour sessions demonstrating real cases, showing not just the steps but also the logic behind the choices. During reviews, they ask, "What did this teach us and how can we reinforce it?" and immediately add the lesson to the knowledge base. By teaching, they themselves identify gaps in understanding and close them. The team shortens the path to results and quality stops depending on a single hero. This is the true lever of productivity. Knowledge transforms into a system. Fact 41. Productive individuals have entry gates for external requests, clear and uniform for everyone. They do not accept vague requests like, "Take a look when you have time," but instead direct them to a short brief or a 5-field form: goal, deadline, done criterion, data source, and who approves. Work does not begin without this, not out of snobbery, but to avoid wasting hours on guesswork. Their calendars have designated office hours for urgent matters, and outside of these, communication is asynchronous: comments in documents or requests in a tracker. Email and messengers are separated by roles: work matters in one channel, personal in another, and emergencies via phone, to prevent a false sense of urgency. For each category of requests, pre-prepared response templates exist. Yes, if, I cannot right now, but I can offer, ready to discuss when is determined. This removes emotional swings and shifts communication from impulse to process. Fewer misunderstandings, faster starts, more predictable outcomes. Fact 42. They view time as capital, not as sand in their palm. There's a shadow hourly rate, a benchmark used to decide whether to do a task themselves, automate it, or outsource it. Their calendar functions as an investment portfolio of attention. Morning blocks are allocated to projects with the highest expected ROI, while remaining time is spent on low-value tasks. The rule, "pay yourself first," is applied. The first 60 to 90 minutes of the day are dedicated to the main asset that creates value, in a month, not in a minute. Weekly profitability audits are conducted. Actions that yielded measurable results are identified, as are those that merely created an illusion of busyness. Unnecessary ones are cut without pity. They calculate the cost of delay. If postponing a task burns an opportunity, its priority is raised. And, as in finance, they diversify. Some time is invested in risky experiments, some in stable processes, and some in system maintenance, sleep, learning, connections, without which capital depreciates. Fact 43. Paradoxically, productive individuals deliberately cultivate boredom, short white spaces devoid of incoming signals, allowing the brain a chance to connect the dots. Walks without headphones, showers without podcasts, 10 minutes in the morning on the balcony with a blank stare at the sky. These are not laziness, but intentionally created silence for the default mode network where insights are born. They enter an input-free mode before generative tasks. An hour without reading others' ideas, just their own draft and a blank page. The phone goes to another room, the laptop is in flight mode, and watches are without notifications. A capture card is kept handy. Thoughts are caught and returned to the task, not leading down new rabbit holes. Such a silence incubator reduces information intoxication and gives depth a chance to emerge. It is often here that an idea that has been dormant for weeks, unable to break through the noise, is found. A thesis formulation, an unexpected connection, a resolution to conflicting requirements. Fact 44th. They train thick skin in small doses through regular practice of managed risk. Instead of heroic leaps, the rule is one bravery a day. A cold email to a potential partner, publishing a raw prototype for a niche audience, requesting feedback from a strict reviewer. They keep a rejection log and count not only wins but also attempts, so as not to confuse results with effort. For fears, there are preventive railings, a quality checklist before publication, a plan for if criticism comes, predefined discussion boundaries. The main thing is to separate self from work, discussing the artifact and hypothesis, not a person's worth. The community for first showings is safe, colleagues who know the context and can give specific signals. Such micro-daring builds resilience to noise and speeds up the feedback loop. Less self-sabotage, more real data for improvement. Fact 45th. Their main accelerator is reputational capital, predictability on which trust is built. Productive people make promises cautiously, fulfill them precisely, and inform in advance if a forecast changes. I see a risk of not finishing by Thursday due to X. I propose option A, reduce scope, or B, shift deadline. They have a red button rule. They admit mistakes publicly and early, providing a plan for correction, not excuses. Correspondence and meetings end with closing the loop. The outcome, decisions, responsible parties, and deadlines, all in one paragraph. They thank for contributions and make others' achievements visible. This reduces future transaction costs. People are more willing to cooperate with those who play fairly by the rules. A system of small, kept promises turns into a credit of trust, which speeds up approvals, opens doors, and reduces unnecessary checks. Ultimately, speed is not one person's sprint, but the result of mutual reliability. Fact 46th. Productive individuals do not live a half-lived life. Every interaction is a decision. They arrange short processing sessions, following 3 strict steps. First is filtering. Delete, unsubscribe, or block sources that offer no value. Requests without a purpose or deadline also fall here. Second is routing. Tasks requiring less than 2 minutes are done immediately. Those taking longer receive a clear next step and a place in the calendar or a this week list, not an endless someday. Third is delegation by meaning, not by title. Assign to someone with decision-making authority and resource access, along with done criteria. There's no think about it later. That's just disguised debt. Emails are marked not by flags, but by outcome. Reply, resolved, waiting. Chats are closed after a protocol. Outcome, who, by when. This single touch mode dries up the swamp of unfinished tasks and removes the constant background stress from lingering small matters. Fact 47. Their taste is not innate but trained through a library of benchmarks. Productive individuals compile swipe files, the best examples of letters, scripts, presentations, interfaces, and business proposals. They then periodically conduct an anatomy of success, analyzing why something works, what decisions were made, and what principles can be generalized. Each benchmark becomes a mini quality checklist. For text, it's a clear purpose, logic, supporting points, and rhythm. For slides, it's hierarchy, contrast, and one thesis per screen. For a product, it's the done criterion from the user's perspective. Before launching, they compare the draft with 2 to 3 benchmarks, choosing what to borrow, in essence, not in form. This creates a standard constructor, not plagiarism, but transferring the solution's architecture to one's own material. After several cycles, the team starts writing, layout, and designing faster and cleaner, as the quality bar transforms from a fog into visible rails. Fact 48. Successful people play the long game. Alongside quick wins, they build slow assets that work while they sleep. These are value trees, a knowledge base with well-labeled cases, a set of reusable modules and scripts, evergreen content that doesn't lose relevance, partnerships that create an inbound flow, and automations that remove hours of routine work monthly. In their calendar, there's an investor hour. Once a week, they invest effort into an asset that will yield dividends in months, refining a guide into an evergreen article, turning a successful email into a template, or packaging internal practices into a training module. The metric is value half-life. If a result has a short lifespan, it's made cheaper. If it lives long, it's given more time. Such a portfolio unloads tomorrow. There's less urgency, more predictable inflow of results, and success stops depending solely on today's mood. Fact 49th. When stuck, productive people have an exit protocol for sticky clay. Step 1 is to narrow the task to a physical action for 5 minutes. Not write a report, but open the draft and list 3 sections. Step 2 is to start a double timer. 10 minutes of bad execution without judgment, plus a short physical warm-up to break inertia. Step 3 is to change modality. If thoughts get stuck in text, switch to a hand-drawn diagram. If dealing with numbers, speak them aloud and record. Step 4 is an external anchor. Show an intermediate artifact to a colleague or your past self via a note saying what's done, what's missing. Step 5 is clearing obstacles. Close extra tabs, ask one question to the owner of the dependency, write down fears and countermeasures. In total, this turns fog into a path. The brain receives a signal, we are moving, not we are unprepared. And often, a worthy idea emerges precisely during the 10th minute of bad execution. 50th fact. They don't rely on internal feelings of beautiful/not beautiful, but on user value and application facts. Every project starts with formulating the job that a person hires a solution to do, jobs to be done. What the situation is, what the pain point is, what the desired outcome is. With this in hand, they conduct short interviews or observations, collecting friction maps, where people stumble, what they miss, what words they understand. The metric is the North Star, linked to real behavior, completed actions, time to result, reduced errors, reuse. Hypotheses are tested on minimal artifacts, not a full release, but a prototype, script, or mock-up that can be shown to 5 target people by Thursday. Feedback is recorded structurally: fact, interpretation, solution. This cycle removes self-satisfaction from the equation and puts things on the rails of empiricism. Success is measured by utility, and habits by how quickly that utility becomes real. Fact 51. Productive individuals manage not only tasks, but also their personal power portfolio, a skills map that shows where speed is increasing. They categorize competencies into 3 layers: core, without which work doesn't progress; amplifying, which speed up the core; and supporting, which maintain energy and thinking. Every quarter, they conduct a review. They identify 2 to 3 abilities that were bottlenecks in projects and plan targeted training for them with metrics: speed of sketching a structure, accuracy of time estimations, quality of communication according to a checklist. They use a T-shaped profile format, one deep vertical skill and several stable horizontal ones for interfacing with others. Each competency has a next micro level, measured in behavior, not abstractions. This way, growth stops being a slogan of getting better overall and becomes an engineering plan where improving one link removes weeks of friction along the entire path. Fact 52nd. They neutralize cognitive biases through decision hygiene. Before making an important choice, they formulate not only a forecast, will we make it by September 15th, but also a probability, an honest percentage of their confidence. Afterward, they revisit their forecast diary and calibrate themselves. How well did their estimates match reality? Are they overestimating confidence in familiar tasks and underestimating it in new ones? They separately record rejected alternatives and the reasons for rejection to catch the hindsight bias. The sunk cost fallacy is cut with the rule, new data means a new decision. Past efforts are not an argument. They work with their blind spots using red teams, colleagues who conscientiously seek weaknesses in a plan. In contentious cases, they use checklists and simple risk scales, replacing emotions with numbers. As a result, decisions become consistently high quality, fewer impulsive course changes, more correct recalculations of direction based on facts. Fact 53. Their productivity's financial aspect is transparently integrated into the process. There's an experiments fund, a small but regular budget for prototypes and hypothesis testing, preventing ideas from being sold based solely on eloquent words. There's also a learning fund, a fixed percentage for courses, books, and tools. It's protected from urgent expenses, like insurance for future speed. Recurring expenses are automated, and calculations are made in time units. How many hours of life are bought or saved by a service, subscription, or automation? High-effort tasks are honestly outsourced or replaced by services if the shadow hourly rate indicates it's more beneficial. Risks are mitigated with buffers and insurance for critical components. Seasonal peaks are planned with reserves of money and time. This approach isn't about hoarding, but about attention economics. Every ruble and hour works towards the strategy, not dissolving into random urgency. Fact 54th. Their toolset is minimalist and compatible, much like a well-designed workshop. A single task management system serves as the sole source of truth. Notes are kept in an easily searchable and storable format. Plain text files, Markdown, and data resides in tables with clear fields for pain-free migration. Communication channels are separated by function. Discussions happen where decision history is preserved. Quick questions go into a separate corridor to avoid mixing with artifacts. Keyboard shortcuts and text expanders are considered basic literacy, saving hours within a month. Quarterly, a stack cleanup occurs. Redundant applications are removed. Duplicate functions are merged, backups are checked, and the recovery scenario is verified. Integrations are built using simple bridges, shared folders, standard formats, templates. The result is less software friction, fewer surprises as the team grows, and more speed on what truly creates value. Fact 55th. Productive leaders cultivate habits focused on team sustainability, autonomy, a clear purpose, and room for mastery. They establish freedom frameworks, defining what's fixed, what can change, when to ask for input, and when to decide independently, thereby eliminating micromanagement. Feedback follows an observation, effect, suggestion to improve, not to harm. Their schedules include quiet windows for creative work by everyone, not just the leader. Meetings have clear roles so expert voices aren't drowned out by status updates. Process health is measured alongside results. Task queues, work in progress levels, and overtime frequency are monitored as early burnout signals. Workloads are redistributed before burnout occurs. They train backups, document knowledge, and plan tempo shifts after releases. This culture makes success independent of a single hero and maintains speed over the long haul. 56th fact. Productive individuals plan for risks as meticulously as they plan their projects. For every significant project, they maintain a one-page risk passport outlining the goal and success criteria, 3 main threats, early indicators, an alert threshold, and pre-agreed actions upon activation. For instance, data delay exceeding 48 hours is a yellow indicator, triggering the simplified model without segmentation protocol. Departure of a key contractor is red, initiating a switch to Plan B with a pre-vetted alternative provider. Weekly, the passport is reviewed in a brief stand-up meeting. They note which markers have lit up, how much buffer has been consumed, and which dependencies require manual follow-up. This discipline transforms chaos into manageability. Risks are not left to feelings, but are kept in clear view, where time is a currency and every early decision is cheaper than late heroism. Fact 57th. Their speed relies on default decisions, standards that save hundreds of micro-choices weekly. A new document doesn't start from a blank slate, but from a template. Title, goal, definition of done, risk block, decision log. Emails with typical scenarios, reply to a brief, clarify requirements, postpone a deadline, reside in a text expander. A couple of hotkeys and a draft with the necessary structure is ready, needing only context added. Meetings conclude with the same formula: outcome, who, by when, and this paragraph immediately goes into the shared log. For design, there's a component library. For data, a unified metrics dictionary. So conversion means the same thing everywhere. Standards don't live in a folder somewhere, but alongside the work, embedded in templates and checklists. The result is less friction at the start, cleaner handoffs between people, and fewer errors from differing interpretations of words. Fact 58. Demonstrations are the engine of pace. Instead of "we'll show when it's beautiful," productive teams have a ritual in their calendar. A short demo every Friday, following the formula was, became, hinders. 3 slides or 1 screen are not for a show, but for checking value. What exactly is already working, why it's important to the user, and where the holdups are. Not everyone is invited to the demo, but only those who can make a decision or remove a blocker. Questions are recorded in the minutes, and controversial forks are transferred to a decision document with alternatives. This cycle eliminates self-deception, like "we are almost ready," and turns weeks into measurable steps. Plus, there's a psychological effect. A public rhythm reduces the temptation to endlessly polish details. The team learns to talk about progress specifically, not generally okay, and to see the product through the eyes of a viewer, not just the author. Regular demos become the project's metronome. It sets the beat for all other processes. Fact 59th. For creative tasks, productive individuals utilize distinct phases, expand and contract. Initially, there is divergence. A time-limited window is established where evaluations and edits are prohibited. The objective is to generate as many options as possible, even if they are raw and bold. Techniques such as idea inversion, analogies from other industries, or brainstorm rewriting of successful external solutions into one's own context are helpful. Subsequently, convergence occurs. Clear selection criteria are defined: goal, constraints, risk, speed of verification, and choices are made through methods like dot voting or scoring. Each selected option is assigned kill criteria, conditions under which it can be closed without debate. An intermediate artifact is mandatory: a sketch, a text scenario, or an interactive mock-up. This rhythm eliminates the perpetual "not right, not so," and transforms inspiration into a process. There is room for playful experimentation and for decisive cuts, and the team understands precisely what is needed at any given moment: ideas without hesitation or a calculated selection. Fact 60. Productive individuals utilize external memory with spaced repetition. They maintain an operational glossary for projects, which includes terms, accepted abbreviations, and assumptions, allowing new team members to avoid spending weeks deciphering specific language. Knowledge that requires repetition, such as formulas, commands, or techniques, is stored in flashcards with examples and reviewed at spaced intervals. Today, in 3 days, in a week, in a month. Each flashcard is action-oriented. For instance, how to build table X, what fields are needed for report Y, or template for responding to request Z. Notes feature cross-references. A solution links to data, data to its source, and the source to its context. At the end of each week, a mini-review takes place to identify 2 flashcards that provided real-time savings and those that have become outdated and need updating. This second brain is not for accumulating quotes, but for speeding up execution, reducing time spent on recalling past processes, and increasing confidence that knowledge will be found when needed and in a usable format. Fact 61. Productive people reduce the choice tax through lifestyle standards, capsule wardrobes, meal rotations, pre-assembled kits for recurring days. This isn't about dullness, but about morning predictability. When a shirt, shoes, bag, and chargers have a single place and formula, the brain doesn't waste fuel on minor decisions. The menu also lives by patterns. 5 basic lunches that alternate weekly. Sunday is for shopping and prep, with portions divided into containers and dated. The morning autopilot is simple. Water, light, clothes, the same breakfast, a short walk. No negotiations with oneself. For meetings, there are ready-made kits, a laptop with its charger, adapters, headphones, a notebook, a pen, all in one case. The fewer micro-friction points at the start, the easier it is to enter a focus rhythm. Creativity doesn't die from order. It flourishes in it, because attention isn't frittered away on what to wear or what to eat, but falls on what matters. Fact 62. When a day goes wrong, productive individuals activate a minimum viable day protocol to save their trajectory. First, a 3 to 5 minute pause. Drink water, focus on breathing, and briefly note what exactly is happening. Then, a strict triage. All tasks are divided into 3 baskets: non-negotiable deadlines today, postponable without damage, and optional. Non-negotiable tasks get 1 protected, interruption-free block. Postponable tasks are renegotiated. A short email stating, "Seeing a risk," offering 2 options with new dates and reduced scope. Optional tasks receive a polite refusal. A moratorium on new commitments is imposed until the end of the day. Notifications are set to Do Not Disturb, and the task list is trimmed to 1 step per task. The finale is a brief protocol: what was completed, what was shifted, what caused issues, and how to avoid repetition. This crisis management scenario restores control during chaotic hours, replacing panic with a sequence of small victories and preserved reputation. Fact 63. Cyber hygiene is part of their productivity. 1 incident can erase weeks of work. Therefore, they use a password manager, unique long phrases for each service, and multi-factor authentication for email, document clouds, and finances, preferably hardware keys. Public Wi-Fi is used only through VPN. Admin access is granted based on the principle of minimal sufficiency, and temporary logins for contractors are closed at the end of the sprint. Phishing is prevented by rules. Do not click links in unexpected emails. Check domains and attachments, and use the password manager for autofill, not manual entry. Quarterly, there's a security hour for device checks, updates, access rights review, and storing offline 2FA backup codes. If a device is lost, the burn the bridge scenario is activated. Remote wipe, changing key passwords, and notifying the team. This isn't paranoia. It's insurance for time and data that pays off with the very first near incident. Fact 64. Those who don't work in solitary silence get things done faster. Productive individuals incorporate pair work and review rituals. For complex tasks, use a 45 to 90-minute driver-navigator approach. 1 person types, the second maintains context and asks questions, with roles switching according to a timer. For texts, a table read is employed. Reading aloud paragraph by paragraph, where the language stumbles, the reader will also stumble. Criticism follows rules: observation, effect, suggestion, avoiding personal taste. Contentious decisions are documented with alternatives. Before a review, the rubber duck method is useful. Spend 5 minutes explaining the task to yourself and record what became clear. There are also silent sprints. A shared timer, a common goal, cameras on, each in their own window, but with a sense of camaraderie. At the end, 3 minutes for artifact demonstration. Such social mechanics cut through dead ends, catch errors earlier, and give the brain an external rhythm that is hard to break with procrastination. Fact 65th. Public speaking and project defenses for them are not done haphazardly, but follow a rehearsal checklist. First, there's a rough run on camera, not for aesthetics, but to check logic, pace, and pause length. The recording is then reviewed with a list of points to simplify, shorten, or add examples to. Next is a reading desk session with a colleague. 1 slide, 1 thesis, and 1 number. Anything extra is removed. Audio and video are prepared with duplication. The presentation is provided in 3 formats: editable, PDF, video. A copy is kept on a flash drive and in the cloud. Fonts are embedded, and an offline demo is available. In the bag is a presenter's case, adapters, an extension cord, spare batteries, a clicker, a marker, and cable ties. A day before, the venue is checked: screen, sound, earplugs for focus before starting, and a backup plan without slides, a structure of 3 stories and 1 table with key numbers. The result is less randomness and trembling, more control over what matters: content, audience attention, and staying within the allotted time. Fact 66th. Productive individuals practice calendar archaeology, a sober analysis of the past 30 days based on facts, not memory. They export events and label each block with 3 simple tags: value gained, direct contribution to a goal, system maintenance, support for processes, or noise, no return. They then calculate proportions and create a heat map, where hours were concentrated and what truly moved the needle. Recurring noisy meetings without resolutions are discarded or moved to asynchronous. High-yield slots are secured as untouchable. Maintenance is optimized with templates. Simultaneously, regularities are reviewed. Every time subscription needs reapproval, otherwise it becomes a tax. The outcome is concrete edits for the next cycle. Remove 2 pointless calls, double morning blocks for the main project, and reinstate 1 free buffer on Wednesday to avoid being swept away by a wave of urgency. Fact 67th. Productive individuals once a year conduct a board meeting with themselves, a 1-page report on attention and results. The sheet details the P&L of time, where income was generated, projects with measurable impact, where expenses occurred, routine tasks that don't scale, and where investments were made: training, assets, partnerships. Alongside this is a decision map: which forks in the road were taken and what guided those choices. 3 stories of the year describe cause and effect relationships, not emotions: hypothesis, action, fact, conclusion. The report concludes with a stop, continue, start matrix, including dates and initial steps. There are no Be Better manifestos, only behavioral changes. Stop free consultations on Fridays, transition onboarding to a video guide, dedicate 40 minutes weekly to writing an expert. This format eliminates self-deception and provides a strategy for the next year, where each new habit has an owner, a measure, and a deadline. Fact 68th. Dependency management is their everyday superpower. Instead of the abstract, waiting for data from analytics, productive teams have a registry of expectations. It specifies who owes what, in what format, by what date, and with what response SLA. Each dependency is accompanied by a ping packet, a short template email with context, a clear request, an example of the expected artifact, and an alternative proposal. If the full set is unavailable, send minimal X. We'll build a simplified version. Escalation is stepwise and pre-agreed. T plus 24 hours, a reminder. T plus 48, a mirrored Plan B. T plus 72, a decision to cut scope or postpone the deadline with a protocol for all stakeholders. On the task board, a dependency is marked with a separate waiting status with visible indicators. This pragmatic approach removes passive "maybe it will arrive" from the workflow. and turns waiting into a manageable process with clear resolutions and a lower risk of a snowball effect. Fact 69th. To ensure that decisions hit their mark, productive individuals regularly go into the field. They build short observation cycles, 5 to 7 half-hour interviews per week with real users or colleagues at the point of use, usage diaries with photos/screenshots, and intent-to-result journey maps that note stumbles and detours. Questions are not about like-dislike, but rather, what did you do before, after? Where did you spend time? What did you miss? Artifacts are entered into a shared insight registry, each with tags and links to hypotheses. Changes are small and quick. A button's wording is altered, an extra step is removed, a critical field is highlighted, and a behavioral metric is checked a week later. This field mode brings reality back to the desk. Fewer opinion-based disputes, more application facts. Decisions stop being isolated, and the product process more accurately addresses the real work it's hired to do. Fact 70. Their cycle closures are not a quiet dissolution, but a release note ritual. Every week, the team records in 10 to 12 lines what has been released and why it is important, what debts have been consciously left, what metrics they are observing next week, and what is going into the archive. One artifact is attached to the release notes, a screenshot, a link to a document, a table snapshot, so that done is visible, not just stated. Separate, well-deserved thanks are given to whoever removed a blocker, whoever found a defect, whoever simplified a process. At the end of the quarter, the weekly notes are compiled into a progress museum, a collage of artifacts and decisions that makes growth tangible and motivates better than any slogan. Alongside this, tails are closed. Branches are archived, duplicates are cleaned, accesses are revoked, checklists are updated. Such a transparent finale reduces cognitive noise, speeds up onboarding, and reinforces the team's sense of completion, fuel without which the next stretch is harder. Fact 71. Productive people turn tasks into scenes, a cinematic trick that clears the fog. Each scene has a place, time, actors, props, and a done frame. Not finish the report, but scene, conference room A, 10 to 11:30, actors, me and the analyst, props, XYZ spreadsheet, benchmark, 2025 Q1 report example, scene end, 3 sections with numbers, and a 1-page conclusion. The script format bypasses abstractions and sets specifics, where it will happen, who is needed, what to open first, what to finish with. Blockers and pace markers are attached to the scene. If no structure in 20 minutes, switch to a thesis map. Then, scenes are edited into an act, a day's sprint, and given time codes. The trick is simple but cuts procrastination. The brain sees not shapeless, important work, but a short episode with clear settings and a final frame. The finish is fixed by an artifact, not a should-do feeling, so the day unfolds as a sequence of completions. Fact 72nd. Successful individuals leverage automation and AI as a power tool, but with safeguards. The principle of brief, draft, verification is applied. First, a clear prompt with context, target audience, and done criteria is provided. Then, a quick draft is generated by the model or script, and only then is human editing performed with fact-checking and style review. Sensitive data is not sent to external services. Input is anonymized, and local tasks are handled in offline tools. Any generation goes through a checklist: goal alignment, source verification for numbers, legal limitations, and tone. A prompt journal is maintained. Successful prompts are turned into templates with examples so the team doesn't reinvent the wheel. For routine tasks, batches are used: bulk file renaming, automatic table assembly, auto-filling fields. For creative tasks, wording and structure variations are offered, but the final say remains with the author. This way, AI accelerates without blurring responsibility. Speed increases without loss of quality and ethics. Fact 73rd. Productive individuals measure their energy rather than guessing based on mood. They read their biomarkers like a dashboard. 3 simple indicators: sleep duration and continuity, resting morning heart rate, and subjective energy level already provide a picture. These are complemented by heart rate variability, HRV, and the load from previous days. If the pulse is higher than the baseline norm and sleep is leaky, mechanical tasks and coordination are scheduled, not strategic decisions. Caffeine and heavy workouts are reserved for the first half of the day. The evening is for recovery. There are red days with a protocol: calendar protection, 1 main block, 0 new commitments. Conversely, green windows, when metrics are high, are dedicated to deep creativity, presentations, and complex negotiations. This approach does not turn life into a sports tracker, but eliminates the urge to push beyond one's limits. Decisions are adapted to physiology, making success more stable. Fact 74th. Contracts and frameworks are a hidden driver of productivity, especially for freelancers and cross-functional teams. Successful collaborations formalize expectations. This includes a statement of work with a clear scope, artifacts at milestones, done criteria, an SLA for feedback, and a set number of revision iterations. The contract includes a procedure for scope changes, a change request with cost implications for time and budget so that just a little more doesn't break deadlines. The payment schedule is tied to results: an advance payment to start, an intermediate artifact for the second installment, and final acceptance to close. Communication rules are built in: where the truth about tasks lies, which channels are for emergencies, and how to interpret silence, as agreement or not. IP and licenses are described in advance: who owns the source files and what formats are transferred. This legally dry layer paradoxically accelerates creativity: less elbow pushing, fewer assumptions, more clarity and speed on the core substance. Fact 75th. They operate seasonally, acknowledging that a year is not a linear straight line. There are power-up seasons, training, asset building, prototypes, and harvest seasons, releases, sales, public cycles, with off-seasons in between for system maintenance. Each quarter begins with the selection of a seasonal theme, one that will define the week's focus: publications, data infrastructure, or partnerships. The calendar reflects the season. Power-up periods have more downtime and buffers, fewer external commitments. Harvest seasons involve condensed demos, strict feedback windows, and increased support. Metrics are also seasonal. During power-up, practice hours and completed components are tracked. During harvest, conversion and time to result are key. After reaching a peak, a wind down is mandatory: a week of light tasks, debt cleanup, and vacation to avoid burning out the soil. This agricultural perspective removes the feeling of an eternal marathon, making success cyclical, predictable, and human. Fact 76th. Their roadmaps are not a wish list, but a strict now, next, later matrix with WIP limits at each horizon. Now includes only items that are already resourced and have kill criteria, conditions under which a task is closed without dispute. Next contains hypotheses for which briefs are prepared and a demo date is set. These cannot be postponed indefinitely. A judgment of ideas occurs monthly, either into work or into archive or for rework. Later is a refrigerator from which ideas are taken seasonally, not on a whim. The quarter is divided into 2 to 3 bets with measurable metrics and clear artifacts at milestones. Each bet has an owner, a buffer, and a list of dependencies with response SLAs. On Fridays, a spotlight review takes place. What has shifted in metrics, how much buffer has been consumed, and which risk has flashed. This way, uncertainty does not spread across the calendar, but lives in cells with transparent entry and exit rules. 77th fact. Debts are managed like financial assets. A debt ledger is maintained with three columns: technical, tools and infrastructure; process, gaps in rituals and standards; and knowledge, unformalized solutions and expertise in people's minds. Each debt has a percentage, an estimate of its weekly time cost, extra clicks, repeated mistakes, delayed approvals. Every 2 weeks, debt repayment is scheduled, either one large or several small tasks, to prevent interest from consuming the future. Decisions about debt are made like investment decisions. If elimination returns N hours per month, it competes for a spot with features. Debt is not hidden in shame. It is made visible, a board with labels risk, cost, benefit, and a rule: no project can be closed with critical debt. This approach protects long-term speed. The team runs on a smooth track, not a bumpy field where every step is a loss of energy. Fact 78. Before important races, productive individuals rehearse not only the content but also the obstacles. This is the method of mental contrasting. First, a vivid image of the desired outcome with a measurable metric is created. By Friday, a demo where a user completes a scenario in 60 seconds. Then, a cold list of barriers follows: brittle data access, a tendency to polish text, the risk of drowning in chats, and immediately, if-then bridges. If there's no access by 12 p.m., we switch to synthetic data. If there's no structure after 20 minutes, we switch to a thesis map. If chats are distracting, we enable Do Not Disturb mode and one response slot. The final touch is the first frame of action for tomorrow. Open the draft, insert the template, write the section headings. Such dramaturgy removes the illusion of control and turns the goal into a sequence of linked gears, where even a failure is a foreseen scene, not a catastrophe. Fact 79th. Productive individuals have their own operating system, the role of a producer even without a team. They separate on-the-machine work from over-the-machine work. The former is responsible for producing artifacts, the latter for planning, buffers, dependencies, and communications. In the morning, the producer mode is activated. 15 to 20 minutes are spent on task sequencing, clarifying done criteria, sending dependency request emails, and updating the risk book. The afternoon is dominated by the executor mode, deep work according to time codes. In the evening, a brief daily summary takes place: what has been closed, what blockers exist, and what is planned for tomorrow. If an assistant is available, the producer describes operator-level instructions, checklists for bookings, data collection, and reports to offload mechanical tasks. This reduces internal role conflict. The strategist does not fight the craftsman for the same hour, and the system delivers a stable pace without jumps or dips. Fact 80. They face crises like reliability engineers, with pre-written run books, recovery scenarios. A separate folder holds templates for 3 levels: operational failure, a laptop/software breaks; reputational risk, an error in a public artifact; and calendar collapse, deadline overlaps. Each includes the first 15 minutes, who to notify, what to stop, what minimal artifact to issue, where backups and contacts are located. Ready-made texts exist, admitting fault without excuses, a plan for corrections, and new deadlines with volume options. Concurrently, a status page for stakeholders is maintained, a single, updated document showing progress in liquidation. Quarterly drills are conducted, an incident is simulated, and the recovery process is walked through, from remote device wiping to releasing a fix. The outcome is less panic, faster turnaround, and preserved trust. A crisis becomes a system test, not a game of chance. Fact 81. Productive individuals maintain an explicit log of assumptions, a brief document outlining what must be true for the plan to work. Each hypothesis is assigned a confidence percentage, a source, historical data, interviews, expert assessment, a revision date, and a disruptor, a fact that will nullify the confidence. When launching a campaign, this might look like CPL equals 900 PEC, 70% historical. Landing page conversion 3 to 5%, 60% last quarter's test. CRM access by September 1st, 80% contract in progress. Alongside are verification signals. If, after 500 clicks, conversion less than 2%, switch to option B. The log is updated in a weekly session. Hypotheses transition into knowledge, are reformulated or closed with a reason noted. This catalog of reality extinguishes narrative illusions, reduces costly surprises, and makes course corrections predictable. The team debates not feelings, but assumptions and the facts of their verification. Fact 82nd. Language is their tool for speed, so tasks are formulated engineer-like. Perfective verb plus artifact plus criterion plus deadline. Not work on presentation, but assemble a draft of 10 slides V0.1 by 1600. One thesis slide, no animation, font X. Not deal with report, but export Q3 sales table, fields A through F, compare with Q2, draw 3 conclusions by 12:30. Taboo are vague terms like think, work on, adhere to. The same grammar is maintained in correspondence. The top paragraph states the goal and action, need to choose between 2 options today, and the bottom states result, who, by when. Units of measurement hide subjective preferences. Seconds of a video, pages, screens, pieces, versions, V0.1/V1.0. Such language hygiene costs vanishingly little, reducing friction. Fewer clarifications, fewer returns, fewer grievances about misunderstood, and the calendar ceases to be a field of guesswork. Fact 83. They save minutes by returning to tasks using context anchors. Each session concludes with a brief project card. Where I stopped, 1 sentence. Next 2 steps, 5-minute actions, expectations/dependencies, and links/files. A guide note is left in the text. Next is the methods section. Insert graph A, data is in @reports/2025 Q3. For complex tasks, a screenshot of the current state and a short audio note to oneself for tomorrow are made. 30 to 60 seconds to regain the logic. The work environment is saved as bouquets. A set of project-related tabs/windows opens with 1 click, and unnecessary ones are closed. The first step upon re-entry is tiny. Finish 1 sentence, run 1 test, lay out 1 block. Anchors remove the start friction, eliminate the fear of a blank page, and turn each return into a smooth acceleration rather than a new climb up a wall. In total, this saves hours per month and noticeably smooths the attention curve. Fact 84th. They extract hidden knowledge through shadowing and reverse interviews. Initially, a novice observes an expert live, focusing not on the outcome, but on the process. What windows they open, what checks they perform, and in what order they make micro-decisions. Then, roles switch. The novice runs a task, and the expert asks clarifying questions, catching blind spots. All of this is immediately converted into operations. A checklist of 10 to 15 steps, a reference artifact showing what done looks like, common mistakes, and quick quality tests. After a couple of weeks, shadowing is supplemented by a reverse interview, where the novice explains the process logic to a third party, solidifying knowledge within the team. This pipeline transforms individual talent into a systemic asset. Onboarding is shortened, quality becomes less dependent on mood, and the magic of work stops living in heads and moves to clear, verifiable steps accessible to everyone who follows. 85th fact. Their forecasts are not a single point, but a range with defined rails. Externally, 90% probability of date/volume is communicated, e.g., we will deliver between September 12th and 16th the basic version with 8 screens. Internally, an earlier guideline is used for a buffer. Alongside are tolerances. If metric X goes beyond 2 to 3 standard deviations, the agreed corridor, we activate Scenario B. Scenarios are pre-signed. Cut volume to the minimally viable version, transfer N hours from Project Y, postpone demo by 24 hours with Z compensation. Estimates live as distributions. P50 for resource planning, P90 for promises. On the board are decision-triggering forks. T plus 48 without data access, or prototype fails test with 5 out of 7 users, the decision is activated automatically without new approvals. This approach respects uncertainty. The calendar ceases to be fragile, and stakeholder interests are protected by transparent rules for turning points written before the storm. Fact 86. Productive individuals structure their plans not only by priority, but also by energy type. They categorize tasks into 4 groups: deep solitary, architecture, writing, analysis; deep social, one-on-one strategic discussions; light solitary, routine reports, file sorting; and light social, status calls, quick approvals. The morning peak is allocated to the first type, midday to the second, and the afternoon slump to the lighter categories. Within these categories, tasks are sorted by brain temperature. When alertness and pulse are high, they take creative risks. When energy levels are lower, they handle predictable tasks. Emotional valence is also considered. Difficult conversations are scheduled for windows with higher empathy and self-control. This energy timing doesn't romanticize willpower, but aligns the system with physiology, leading to fewer false starts, less self-sabotage, and a significantly higher chance of completing complex tasks without exhaustion. 87th fact. Fast learners systematically study from the best. They have a bi-weekly benchmarking ritual called Anatomy of the Benchmark, focusing on numbers, not likes. A competitor's product, presentation, or case is selected, and a parameter table is built. Time to first value, steps in a key scenario, fact density per minute, visual hierarchy, and loss points. Then a mini-session occurs. The team tries to build their version within 90 minutes to identify exactly where they lose momentum. The output includes 2 artifacts: a checklist of principles derived from the benchmark, and an experiment for the next week, a specific improvement hypothesis with a metric, such as reduce user path by 1 click or increase specificity to 1 fact every 20 seconds. This cycle turns envy into a tool. External market benchmarks become quality standards, and improvements become verifiable steps, not subjective opinions, accelerating work in the very next sprint. Fact 88. The Project README serves as their safeguard against delays, both from vacations and unforeseen events. All essential information enabling any competent colleague to pick up the work within a day is located on a single page. This includes the project's goal and North Star metric, the definition of done, current status, a map of files and access, key decisions, ADRs with their dates, a list of dependencies and response SLAs, a demo calendar, risks with triggers, and a plan B for launch disruptions. At the beginning of each week, the README is updated and attached to the project card. Links lead to live documents, not local folders. The format is standardized, much like code. It includes a version, e.g. v0.1 or v1.0, a changelog, and designated owners for each section. Consequently, the bus factor decreases, onboarding accelerates, and distortions are reduced as context isn't lost in chats. If the author is suddenly unavailable, the team acts according to instructions, saving time otherwise spent on archaeology, and the project maintains its momentum. Fact 89th. Productive individuals switch between tasks through a context reset gate, a brief yet disciplined protocol. Step 1. Fixation. Record 2 sentences, where you left off, and the first 2 steps to continue in the project card, plus a hot link to the current file/anchor. Step 2. Environment cleanup. Close unnecessary tabs, save the window set as a preset, and make a commit/file version with a clear tag, e.g. v0.3 draft structure. Step 3. Physical reset for 2 to 3 minutes. Drink water, gaze into the distance, do light stretching to signal the brain that the scene has ended. Step 4. Enter the new scene with a micro start. Perform one measurable action for 60 to 120 seconds. Insert a template, create headings, or open a reference. This tunnel cuts losses from overexcitement or getting stuck, reduces the risk of forgetting unfinished details, and turns the day into a montage of completed episodes, not a chaotic clip with breaks and lost threads. Fact 90. Sustainable success relies on boundaries as much as on ambition. Productive individuals make their contract with themselves and loved ones explicit. It includes quiet windows without connectivity, e.g. 8:30 p.m., 7:30 a.m. Extremity rules. No new commitments after 6 p.m. Weekends are for personal projects and recovery only. And presence rituals. Dinner without devices. Family walks scheduled as untouchable meetings. Internally, well-being metrics are tracked. Sleep, heart rate, number of workouts, and social hours per week. If 2 indicators drop, a conservation mode is activated, reducing workload, postponing tasks, taking a 2 to 3 day break. There's also a biannual service pack, a week-long mini sabbatical away from work channels, a review of the year's themes, and a clearing of obligations. This framework is not moralistic, but engineering-based. It prevents success at the cost of oneself, reduces relational noise, and makes results reproducible, without boom and bust cycles, and with a living, not drained battery. Fact 91. Fast onboarding is not luck, but a 30, 60, 90-day plan. Productive individuals proactively prepare a role passport, a quarterly goal, areas of responsibility, success metrics, and a stakeholder map with touchpoint frequency. The first 30 days are for immersion and small wins, one completed artifact to build trust and understand what done looks like standards. By day 60, the goal is independent management of one workflow and a project README to externalize knowledge. By day 90, the expectation is process improvement initiatives, resolving a bottleneck, automation, or an updated checklist. The schedule includes a no-judgment questions ritual for safe clarification. The mentor has review slots and pre-agreed expectations for speed and quality. This framework reduces ambiguity, alleviates the "am I doing this right" anxiety, and multiplies team power. A new player doesn't get stuck guessing, but moves on to a trajectory of results by the end of the first quarter. Fact 92. The shiny object syndrome is neutralized through engineering. Productive individuals do not argue with impulses. Instead, they quarantine ideas. Each new thought is placed on an idea sheet in a single line, specifying the goal, projected metric, and a minimal one-day test. Following this is a 48 to 72-hour cooling-off period. If, after 3 days, the idea remains relevant to the season's theme and aligns with current priorities, it enters the sandbox for experiments with a budget of N hours and kill criteria. No metric growth, close without regret. To avoid getting bogged down in generation, a limit on attempts per sprint and an overall experiment fund in terms of time/money are introduced. Ideas compete not on the beauty of their wording, but on the forecast of their value. What minimal artifact will yield a verifiable signal by Friday? This idea quarantine preserves boldness while protecting the trajectory. Instead of chaotic start-stop cycles, a steady flow of checks is born, where successes turn into bets and the rest become an archive without a sense of loss. Fact 93. Working across time zones requires special choreography. Productive teams build a day relay. Each zone has twilight windows, short overlaps for complex junctures, while everything else is asynchronous. The default language becomes UTC, and deadlines are formulated in specific dates and times, avoiding today/tomorrow. Shift handover is not a chat message like "look later," but a package. Status of what's done, what's missed, a list of blockers with owners, artifacts, and the first two steps for the next link. Decisions are logged centrally, so history isn't lost in the messenger feed. Meetings rotate weekly so the load doesn't always fall on one side. Emergency channels are defined in advance, and quiet windows are respected. A policy of no hard releases at night for any one zone reduces errors and resentment. As a result, the team doesn't live in perpetual jet lag, but in a predictable follow-the-sun rhythm, where speed is born from the quality of handovers, not from round-the-clock online presence. The 94th fact states data becomes more effective when communicated through visual literacy. Productive individuals structure their conclusions on a single page, which includes the objective, a key chart, two tables with assumptions, and a one-paragraph conclusion. Charts are constructed for accuracy, not just aesthetics, with unit labels, with the axis starting at 0 where necessary, and without breaking the scale for dramatic effect. The mean should not replace the median when outliers are present. For exponential growth, a logarithmic scale is used, but with a clear annotation. Comparisons are placed side by side, using small multiples rather than by changing scales. Percentages are accompanied by absolute values. Errors and confidence intervals are shown to avoid selling precision where it doesn't exist. Each chart answers a single question and includes a what to do, a process-oriented decision. This discipline saves hours of debate and kilometers of emails. The team sees a clear picture, not just a feeling of the trend, enabling immediate decision-making without further digging into raw tables. 95th fact. Legal hygiene is a quiet but critical habit for productive individuals. A single incident can halt a project for weeks. They maintain a registry of licenses and permissions, where photos, fonts, music, and code snippets originated, what their terms of use are, whether attribution is required, and their expiration dates. Images of people are accompanied by model releases. User data is anonymized or collected with explicit consent and the minimum necessary volume, and access rights are granted based on the least privilege principle. NDAs and IP transfer agreements are kept in order, and contract templates include provisions for source material rights and amendment procedures. A checklist is applied before publication. Sources and licenses, commercial rights, absence of prohibited trademarks/sensitive data, and correct attribution. In questionable cases, the rule is stop until verified. This prevention is not about bureaucracy, but about speed. When rules are clear and records are clean, releases proceed without blocks, and reputation works for the project, not against it. Fact 96th. Productive individuals have invariance, a set of primary principles that do not change when tasks, teams, or technologies shift. This is a concise, almost engineering-like rulebook stating artifact over words. Decisions and assumptions are documented in writing. Statuses are public by default. Errors are acknowledged early along with a remediation plan. Data trumps hierarchy. And time is a finite asset managed through WIP limits. These principles are not wall decorations, but are embedded in processes, in brief templates, email formulas, done criteria, and communication agreements. Once a quarter, invariants are re-evaluated during retrospectives. What drove progress, what needed clarification, and what new signals should be added. This prevents teams from debating worldviews under stress. The foundation is already there, and any argument quickly shifts to conforms to violates principle, rather than I think, you think. Speed is born from the predictability of these anchors. Fact 97th. They have a stop protocol, a civilized way to shut down projects that are no longer providing value. It doesn't start with emotions, but with pre-signed kill criteria, metric thresholds, deadlines without progress, debt growth, or loss of access to key resources. The triggering of a criterion automatically initiates the procedure. A short document on why we are closing, lessons learned, a list of transferable artifacts, code, mock-ups, templates, a communication plan for stakeholders, and careful preservation of the repository/accesses. A separate part is value salvage. What can be reused, what can be published as a case study, what can be turned into an internal module. There is also a freeze. If the reason is external and temporary, the project goes into cold storage with a review date. Such a protocol protects the team from sunk costs and moral pits. Instead of dragging it out on principle, there is a clear resolution, freed up slots, and energy for bets that actually move the needle. Fact 98 states that they do not pursue 100% utilization. This is because they understand the laws of queuing systems. The higher the occupancy, the more explosively waiting time and defects grow. Therefore, the target utilization is around 70 to 85% for creative roles. The rest is a buffer for surprises, reviews, and process improvements. This is not laziness, but flow engineering. When queues are short, the request-response cycle shrinks, with fewer losses from context switching and fewer hot potatoes that burn neighboring teams. Planning is built through speed, throughput, and observed completion history, not through dreams of heroic sprints. Visualizing queues, status boards, time in columns, WIP limits allows for catching overheating before a fire. The result is paradoxical. By doing less simultaneously, they finish more overall with fewer rework cycles, because the flow remains laminar, not turning into turbulent chaos. Fact 99th. For them, distribution is not an afterthought, but an integral part of the results design. Before writing a report, releasing a tool, or creating a video, they map out channels. Who needs it? Where these people are? What format fits their context? A one-page letter, a thread with a graph, a short demo. And who can be an amplifier, a partner, a thought leader, an internal newsletter? They plan rhythm and repetition, one main launch and several echo touches with a new angle and facts, avoiding duplicate spam. Each channel has a measurable goal and an application hook, what the person will do after viewing. Artifacts are prepared with distribution in mind, a teaser screen, a 30-second summary, a one-page FAQ. Signals are collected via UTM/behavior metrics, not likes. This approach turns value into influence. Good content doesn't wait to be found, but reaches those who need it in a convenient package and at the right time. Fact 100. Their main secret is not willpower or charisma, but a living, human operating system. One compact handbook that stitches together goals, principles, rituals, checklists, templates, and metrics. It contains the theme of the year and North Stars, invariants and if-then rules, a schedule for focus windows and demo Fridays, communication standards and artifact formats, a risk passport and stop protocols, an asset map, and safety regulations. The document lives alongside the work. It is updated on Fridays, links projects with references, has versions, and a changelog. New habits are introduced through A/B testing for a week and remain only if they provide a measurable effect. If a person is suddenly absent, the system does not fall apart. Work scenes, dependencies, and done criteria are readable by others. Success here is not a fireworks display, but a stable glow, a predictable flow of completions, where each improvement by percentages adds up to a multiple leap over the year.